Welcome in, everybody. It's another weekend of European soccer action, and I have 4 different parlays to target this week. And we've been keeping it simple so far and have had some success at 5-1 in this short European soccer season. And we'll keep going that way this week and hope to go into the international break next week on a high. Now, before the picks, it could be great if you give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more soccer picks across all kinds of leagues all year long. So let's get into it with the very first parlay this weekend, and it's going to be an all EPL parlay, starting off with Brentford and Bournemouth. Brentford have collected 5 points through 3 rounds after a 2-2 draw with Tottenham, a 3-0 win with Fulham, and a 1-1 draw with Palace. Bournemouth have yet to win, and they have 1 point coming from a match day 1 draw with West Ham 1-1. They then lost 3-1 and 2-0 to Liverpool and Tottenham, respectively. Last year, the scores were 0-0 and then a 2-0 Brentford win at home. Now, if you look back into last season, Brentford now have just 1 loss in their past 10 in the EPL, and that was a 1-0 away loss to Liverpool, so no shame there. That was the only time in those 10 games they failed to score. They've also scored in 15 straight league games at GTEC Community Stadium. Bournemouth's slow start has trickled over from last season when they went winless in their final 4 games, and they're now winless in 7, being outscored 13-3 in those games. They've given up the fourth highest XGA as well at 6.2 this season. Meanwhile, Brentford have the 4th highest XG overall at 6.8. I see Brentford getting on the score sheet here, so let's go Brentford to score to start this off. Next up, it's Man City and Fulham. I don't think we need to break this one down too much. Man City are huge -700 home favorites over Fulham. While they didn't run away from the Cottagers last season, they did win both meetings 2-1. And whether it be the EPL, the FA Cup, or the EFL Cup, Man City have won the past 14 games between these teams. Fulham hasn't won against Man City since way back in 2009. The Citizens are once again atop the table after 3 rounds, with wins of 3-0 over Burnley, 1-0 over Newcastle, and 2-1 over Sheffield United. Fulham beat Everton 1-0 before losing to Brentford 3-0 and drawing Arsenal 2-2. Now, a draw with Arsenal is impressive considering it came away from home with a red card and without star striker Alexander Mitrovic, who was sold to Saudi Arabia and Al Hilal. But that will be hard to replicate this week, I think, against the champs, especially considering Fulham have allowed the highest XGA in the league at 9.5, which far dwarfs the second worst in that category, which is Sheffield at 6.8. They've also given up the most shots on target so far with 25, so Man City should, as the odds say, easily win this game. If you were betting it by itself, it's probably Man City to score 2 or 3. It's probably Man City to win by 2. I will just include Man City to win the game in the parlay. And the third leg will be Brighton and Newcastle. Brighton came out flying to start this year with 4-1 wins over Luton and Wolves. Now, neither of those are great teams. They were then knocked back down to earth last week, losing 3-1 to West Ham. Newcastle is also coming off a loss, losing 2-1 at home to Liverpool last week. Previously, they lost 1-0 to Manchester City and smashed Aston Villa 5-1. So not the start they would have expected, but they've had some tough competition to start the year. Now, there's very different outcomes last season when these teams met. There was a 0-0 draw in Brighton, and Newcastle won 4-1 on their home pitch. That 0-0 draw was at the start of the year, though, way back in August, and it was a rare occurrence as the season progressed for these teams to have 0-0 games. Both teams' score bets are now 7-0 in the past 7 Brighton games, and Brighton has actually only failed to score once in their past 31 EPL games. Prior to these last 2 defeats, Newcastle had been undefeated in 12 EPL games going back into last season, and they had just 2 losses in 22. They had scored in 19 of 22 and also in 20 of 24. Now, Brighton leads the Premier League right now in shots on target at 29, while Newcastle are tied with Manchester City in second with 21. Brighton have the highest XG so far at 7.7, but they also have the 3rd worst XGA at 6.6, only better than Sheffield and Fulham. Brighton also have the 2nd most attacking third touches and the most penalty area touches. Obviously, it's a short season, small sample sizes, but all of this to me looks to add up to another game that should include goals, probably a goal from both sides. So let's go both teams to score in this parlay. So it's Brighton and Newcastle, both teams to score, Man City to win, and Brentford to score. That comes in at -108 odds. Next up, it's another parlay, and we're going to the Bundesliga in Germany. Bayer Leverkusen and Darmstadt. Now, Xabi Alonso's Leverkusen have come out flying to start this Bundesliga campaign with a 3-2 win and a 3-0 win over Leipzig and Gladbach in the opening weeks. They're one of 5 teams to be 2-0 to start the season. Alonso brought in several new players this offseason, which include Granit Xhaka, Alex Grimaldo, Nathan Tella, Victor Boniface, and Jonas Hoffmann, and they've all hit the ground running in Leverkusen's strong start. Darmstadt, meanwhile, are one of 4 teams with 0 points so far in the year. The newly promoted team lost 1-0 to Frankfurt and 4-1 to Union Berlin. Leverkusen lead the league in shots on target right now with 18, and they are second to only Bayern Munich in attacking third and penalty area touches. It's early, but the edge here has to go to the more experienced and informed team in Bayer Leverkusen at home. So let's go Leverkusen to win. And next, we'll continue in the Bundesliga, and we'll go Borussia Monchengladbach versus Bayern Munich. As I just mentioned, Gladbach lost 3-0 last week to Leverkusen. They were involved in a wild 4-4 draw to Augsburg the week prior. That's 7 goals allowed now in 2 games for a team that just saw a ton of changes this offseason, and it showed last week as they looked very disorganized. And now they get the champions, Bayern Munich, and new striker Harry Kane. Kane has been involved in 4 of 7 of Bayern's goals this year with 3 goals and 1 assist. Bayern are among that group of perfect teams so far with a 4-0 win over Werder Bremen and a 3-1 win over Augsburg. And we just touched on the fact that Bayern is first in attacking third touches and penalty area touches, and they should get plenty more chances against this Gladbach team, which ranks 17th, which is second worst in opponents attacking third touches, and 18th, the worst, in opponents' penalty area touches. They will, though, come into this game with some confidence in this matchup as they won 3-2 to go with a 1-1 draw against Bayern Munich last season. In fact, Gladbach are undefeated at 3-2-0 against Bayern in the past 5 meetings between these teams. And also, since the start of the 2011-2012 season, Gladbach are 10-5-9 with 35 points against Bayern, easily being the most of any team against them in that time. Still, the Foles have looked poor this season, and they should get picked apart in this one. Bayern haven't failed to score in 29 Bundesliga games and haven't conceded in the first half in the league since March. I say Bayern Munich ends Gladbach's dominance of them right here. So let's go Bayern to win. And the last leg will be over in the French League, and it's Monaco and Lens. Lens were flying near the top of the table last season, but it's been a poor start this year at 0-1-2. They've lost 3-2, tied 1-1, and lost 3-1 to PSG last week. Monaco are fighting at the top of the table, currently first, tied with Marseille on 7 points after a 4-2 win, a 3-0 win, and a 3-3 draw. They're easily the highest scorers so far with 10 goals ahead of Rennes with 8. The next closest are Montpellier after that with 7. Lens had Montpellier's numbers last year, winning 4-1 and 3-0, but that was last year. This year, Monaco are second in XG, Rennes are first, and Lens are 17th, second last, and Monaco are second in shots on target, while Rennes are first again, and Lens are 14th. Monaco probably wins this, but Lens surely concedes on the road, where they've allowed 3 goals in both of their road games so far this year. Let's go Monaco to score in this game. So it's Monaco to score, Bayern Munich to win, and Bayer Leverkusen to win, and that's minus 119 odds in that parlay. If we go to Sunday, we will go start up another parlay, and it's going back to the Premier League, and it's Liverpool and Aston Villa. It's been a good start for both teams here, with Liverpool being 2-1-0, and they're tied in second in the EPL with 7 points, and Aston Villa being 2-0-1 with 6 points. Liverpool have seen both teams to score in all 3 games this season. A 1-1 draw with Chelsea, a 3-1 win with Bournemouth, and a 2-1 win over Newcastle last week, despite taking a red card in the game. Aston Villa lost 5-1 to Newcastle in their first game, but have rebounded with a 4-0 win over Everton and a 3-0 win over Burnley. When these teams match up, there's always usually goals. The scores were 1-1 and 3-1, a 3-1 win for Liverpool last season, and in the last 7 in all competitions, bets on both teams to score are 6-1. Bets on the over 2.5 would be 10-3 in the past 13 if you were just betting the over. Liverpool have only 1 loss at home in Anfield in their past 77 games in the 4 years where they have had fans. So if you take out the COVID season when they had no fans, they have only lost 1 time in 77 on their home pitch. Now, even if you throw that out and you want to include that, if you count that season, they have only 1 EPL loss in 43 and none in their past 13 going back to that COVID season. They've scored in 12 of 13 recently and in 42 of the past 43 as well at home. Their defense, which isn't always strong, will be missing Konate and Van Dijk this game, leaving open the chance for Villa to upset all of these trends. And they just might do so considering they've scored 8 goals in 3 EPL matches this season, plus they have a 5-0 and 3-0 win in the Conference League versus Hibernian. That second win did come on Wednesday though, meaning they could have some fatigue coming to this game in the EPL on the weekend. Still, Aston Villa have only failed to score in 2 of 28 games under Unai Emery, and they have only 3 losses in their past 20 games in all competitions. This one looks like a both teams to score. It also looks like a both teams to score an over 2.5 or maybe just an over 1.5. Sticking in the EPL, it's Arsenal and Manchester United. Another great game on Sunday. Now, Man U have beaten Wolves and Forest 1-0 and 3-2 at home, but they lost 2-0 on the road to Tottenham. If you go back into last season, they haven't been on good form on the road, being 2-1-5, while failing to score in all 5 of those defeats. Arsenal have started with a 2-1 win over Forest, a 1-0 win over Palace, and a 2-2 draw last week with Fulham. Arsenal have been good at home with only 2 losses in their past 24 at home and only 4 losses in their past 26. But they rarely keep clean sheets when they're playing at home. They've kept just 4 clean sheets in those past 26 home games. Bets on both teams to score are also 20-6 in those games. The last 4 games between these teams have all gone to the home team. Arsenal winning 3-2 and 3-1 Manchester United winning last year, while the year before Arsenal won 3-1 and Manchester United won 3-2. Those were all home teams winning, and all those games featuring plenty of goals. Once again, this one also looks like both teams to score, maybe both teams to score an over 2.5 or over 1.5. And then going into the third game, I'm going to Germany again, and it's Union Berlin and RB Leipzig. Now, no matter the league, these two teams always seem to have goals when they play each other. Both meetings last year finished 2-1 for Union Berlin. In fact, the past 6 games between them have all finished 2-1, with Union Berlin winning 5 of those 6. Now, of the 9 games since both of these teams were in the top flight since 2019, only once has there been fewer than 3 goals scored. In the 13 all-time meetings in either the Bundesliga or the second division, now I know we're going far back here, but still, there have been 2+ goals in 12 of 13. But obviously that is just more interesting talking points when you start going back that far than relevant info for this season. So let's just look at this season now. Union Berlin had a successful preseason, winning 4 of their 6 games. Now in the DFB Cup, they beat lower division side Astoria Waldorf 4-0, and then opened the Bundesliga season with identical 4-1 wins over Mainz and Darmstadt. Their final preseason game versus Atalanta was also a 4-0 win. So this side's going to be full of confidence this weekend, knowing that they've scored 16 goals in their past 4 games. Albeit, granted, some of that is preseason versus lower sides, and even Mainz and Darmstadt are not super strong Bundesliga teams, but 16 goals in 4 games is 16 goals in 4 games. Union Berlin were unbeatable at home last season. They were 11-6-0, never dropping 1 game at all. They haven't lost at home in any competition since September 8th, 2022, and that was in the Europa League. It's a run of 21 games. They scored in all but 3 of those games. In the Bundesliga, their last loss came way back in February of 2022. For Leipzig, their games have seen plenty of goals as well this season. They lost 3-2 to Leverkusen, and then they stomped Stuttgart 5-1 last Friday. If you throw in the Super Cup, RB Leipzig have scored multiple goals in all 3 games so far this season. Now, if you go back into last season, they've scored multiple goals in 8 of 9 in all competitions, and they've won 12 of those 14. This game also looks like a both team to score, and maybe a both team to score an over 2.5 or an over 1.5. Now, I really struggled. I wanted to maybe do all 3 of these games, both teams to score for a big price, or maybe pick 2 of them, both teams to score for a decent price. You can get around plus 130 odds just for the 2 Premier League games between both teams to score. But somehow, I just think one of these 6 teams will somehow fail to score a goal, and I don't know which one it is, so I'm just going to go super safe and go over 1.5 in all 3 of those games. So it's over 1.5 between Leipzig and Berlin, over 1.5 between Man U and Arsenal, and over 1.5 between Villa and Liverpool, and that will still get you minus 143. So not a big payout, but I struggle to see not 2 goals coming from all of those games. And finally, let's do one more, and it's going to be spread out over Saturday and Sunday. It's starting in the French League in Ligue 1. It's Brest and Rennes. After 3 rounds, Brest ranks 3rd in Ligue 1 at 2-0-1. They won 3-2, won 2-1, and they lost 2-0 last week. Rennes only have 1 win, but are still undefeated at 1-2-0, sitting in 6th. They won 5-1, drew 1-1, and drew 2-2. So in the 6 combined games between these 2 teams this season, both teams to score is 5-1, and there's been at least 2 or more goals in all 6 games. Head-to-head, last year, Rennes won 2-1 and 3-1, and Rennes have actually dominated this matchup historically. Prior to that, they won 2-1, they drew 1-1, they won 2-1 again, and they had another 2-1 win as well in the 4 matches prior. So in fact, now they are actually 8-5-0 in the past 13 meetings, dating all the way back to 2011, which obviously does go way far back. Rennes looked good in the preseason at 3-1-1. They scored in all of those games as well. In Ligue 1, they've scored in each of their past 9, dating back to last season. They've scored multiple goals in 7 of those 9, and each of those 9 games have seen at least 2 or more goals. This season in Ligue 1, Rennes are first in XG, and they are also first in shots on target. For Brest, they too play in games that feature goals. 8 of 9 have seen 2 or more, if you go back into last season. And at home, they scored in each of their past 11. This season, they are also 4th in shots on target. This game looks like a both teams to score, but surely an over 1.5. And then we'll stick in the French League, and we'll go to Lille and Montpellier. This one is on Sunday, but it's also in France. Montpellier drew 2-2, won 4-1, and lost 3-1 so far. And that makes their matches the second highest average goals per match this season at 4.3. They're just behind Monaco at 5.0, and they're just above Rennes at 4.0. It also makes each of their past 9, going back into last season, having 2 or more goals. In fact, of those 9 games, 7 have seen 4+ goals, and 8 have seen 3 or more. 13 of their 14 have seen 2 or more. In Ligue 1, Lille drew 1-1, won 2-0, and lost 4-1. But they've also been involved in the Conference League versus Rijeka, where they won 2-1 and drew 1-1. Those are 2 extra games, and this will make Sunday their 4th game in 11 days. All 5 of their games, though, so far this season have seen 2 or more goals, and 4 of those 5 have seen both teams to score. Lille's home form has been incredible, though, for a long time at Decathlon Arena Stade Mare-Poré. Across their past 20 in all competitions, going back into last season, obviously, they are undefeated at 16-4-0, and they've scored in 19 of 20. In 17 of those 20, there's been 2 or more goals. Last year's matchups were both won by Lille, 2-1 and 3-1, and 6 of the past 7 meetings between these teams now have seen both teams to score. I think you can see where I'm going with this if you have been following along. Obviously, a bet on both teams to score looks to be in the cards here. Lille have been basically unbeatable at home, while both teams rarely see low-scoring games. And Montpellier also have 2 of the top goal scorers in the league so far, with both Adams and Altamari each scoring 3 goals each. Again, I think this looks like a both teams to score, or maybe an over 1.5. We will round this out in Spain with Osasuna and Barcelona. Osasuna are in a similar boat as Lille, as they were also playing in the Conference League this week, which also makes this their 4th game in 11 days this weekend. Now, they won't have to worry about that anymore, as they went out to Belgian side Club Brugge after a 2-1 loss and a 2-2 draw. In La Liga, they won 2-0, lost 2-0, and won 2-1. So it's not bad performances in the league, but they've still allowed 2 goals in 3 of their 5 competitive games this season. And to the likes of Brugge and Bilbao, these aren't bad teams, but they're certainly not Barcelona, who are 2-1-0 in La Liga after a 0-0 draw, a 2-0 win, and a 4-3 win last week over Villarreal. Last year, Barca won 2-1 and 1-0 in this matchup versus Osasuna. Now, that 1-0 was the lowest scoring game between these 2 teams in some time. Barca had scored multiple goals versus Osasuna in 9 of the previous 10 games, and they'd also won 9 of those previous 10 games as well. Barcelona should win this game, and they possibly will score at least 2 goals like they usually do against Osasuna. But they are away from home, and they just have not looked super convincing, drawing, scoring late, and needing to come back to win 4-3 last week. So none of their 3 games have looked super convincing. I think I'm just going to go over 1.5 here. It brings into play if Barcelona does have a convincing win, or if Osasuna gets on the board themselves and we somehow see a 1-1 draw. So let's go over 1.5 between Osasuna and Barcelona, as well as Lille and Montpellier, and also with Brest and Rennes, and that will come in a minus 114 odds. So there you have it, 4 parlays, 12 different games for this week's bets. Now, I know none of them pay off huge, but it's a long season, and there's nothing wrong with just chipping away at small gains as we get started. And hopefully with all the stats that I've given in those games, if you choose to want to get a little bit better payout, you could bump some of those up to a both team to score or a team to win instead of just going over 1.5 like I have in many of the games. But if you want to do that, let me know what games you like, these games or different games or across different leagues. Drop your picks in the comments below. Be sure to give this video a like, and good luck, everybody, with all of your picks in any soccer league this weekend.